Hello, in this video, I want to share with you what I believe is the very best strategy that you can use in the current UK property market. My name is Simon Zutshi. I've been investing in property since 1995. I'm the author of Property Magic, the Amazon property #1 bestseller, and I'm also the founder of the Property Investors Network. And I can honestly say, this strategy I'm going to teach you is one of my favorite strategies because you can control property, get cash flow and equity growth without the need for a mortgage and without the need for a large deposit. So anybody can do this strategy. Before I tell you about the strategy, let me just tell you why I believe now is such a great time to invest and also why you should be using this strategy. So thanks to you if you've watched the previous two videos. If you haven't, I encourage you to go back and have a look at those. The first one is why is now such a good time to invest? And the second one is why is this such a golden opportunity? So let me just recap on those very quickly for you. So right now there's massive uncertainty in the UK property market, and where there's uncertainty, there's opportunity. You see, right now, a lot of landlords are really worried about Section 24. That's the new tax changes that came in April 2017. And what it means is if you're a high rate taxpayer, which most landlords are, and you own property in your own name, which most landlords do, you're going to be paying more tax on your property. What this means is, over the next few years, I think we're going to see more and more investors deciding to retire early and cash in their properties and go and do something else instead. Maybe retiring to a beach thing, drink cocktails. The other thing that's happening is Brexit. And on the 29th of March 2019, the UK is supposed to pull out of the European Union. But as of yet, there's no deal being arranged. And Mark Carney, who's the chairman of the Bank of England, governor of the Bank of England, he said that he thinks there could be an economic crash if there's no deal, similar to that of 2008. Now, many of the newspapers have taken that and misquoted it and saying they think property prices could come down 35%. Now, whether you believe that or not, whatever you think, whatever I think, doesn't really matter. The general perception in the market is that property prices might massively crash when we come up to Brexit. So what does this mean for you and why is it an opportunity? Well, I believe that once every decade, there's an incredible buying opportunity. The last one was back in 2008 when the market crashed and everyone was trying to sell properties, and those of us who were buying properties did very, very well. Let me ask you a question. Would you have liked to have bought more properties in 2008? I'm sure the answer is probably yes. So if that's the case, you need to recognize when everyone else is panicking, as long as you know what you're doing, there's a really good chance that you could do very, very well by going against the market. Now, you've got to know what strategies to use. Obviously, if the market's coming down, buying and looking to flip property would not be a very smart thing to do because you could buy at one price, it might be lower later on. However, if you're holding property for the long term, it doesn't really matter if you buy today and it goes slightly lower in value in the next 6 months because you're going to hold it for a lot longer than that. As long as you follow the golden rules in Property Magic and you're buying in an area with strong rental demand and you've got positive cash flow, doesn't matter if we have short-term price fluctuation. After all, we live on an island with a limited supply of accommodation and an increasing population. So over the long-term trend, prices go up. So here's the thing. The best strategy to use right now, I believe, is what we call Purchase Lease Options. Now, before I explain, let me just say, this strategy does not work in every circumstance. I mean, a lot of people who think they know about Purchase Lease Options because maybe they've done some training with someone else or they've read about it, but they don't actually understand them and they try and use them in situations where they're not really relevant. So I'm going to explain to you exactly when you can use them and how you can use them and just how profitable they can be for you. So the concept is this. You find somebody who's got a property and they probably want to sell that property, but you know what? Maybe they can't sell it right now. They're struggling to sell, or maybe they can't achieve the price that they'd want to sell it for. Now, as investors, most of us would normally want to negotiate and reduce the cost of the investments we buy. However, with this strategy, we can offer to pay someone the full asking price. Imagine that. If you're competing against everyone else who's offering less money, we can offer someone the full asking price as long as they are flexible on the terms of when they get paid. So this is one of the key things you need to understand. This strategy of purchase lease options works really well if the seller doesn't need the money from the sale right now. So let me explain that. If you think about it, the reason most people might sell a property is because they've got a property that might be worth 200,000 and the mortgage on it is 120, they've got 80,000 pounds of equity and they're selling that property because they want to access that equity. They want to use it for something else. Maybe they want to pay off some other debts or pay down their own home loan, or maybe they want to pay for their daughter's wedding, or they want to do a house extension or buy a fancy car. Whatever it is, they need the money to be able to fulfill their objective. So in that case, if we're offering to buy the property in the future, a purchase lease option is not going to work. So for most people, options don't work. However, there are some people who are selling a property not because they need the money, but they just don't want the property. They don't want the hassle, or they don't want the liability of the debt, of the mortgage on that property. So that might be the case of a landlord. A landlord who's selling up some of his properties or her properties because she doesn't, or they don't want the hassle of the properties anymore, but they don't actually need the money. They're just going to put it in the bank and they're going to live off that for the rest of their life. So therefore they don't need the money now. They might accept being paid in the future. Now, you've got to put yourself in the shoes of the seller. In the right circumstances, there are lots and lots of benefits for this seller. You see, rather than buying a property at a discount now, say it's worth 200,000, as investors we might want to buy it for 180, 170, and we might get some people to agree to sell for that price. But what if we said, look, I tell you what, how about we give you the full 200,000 if you're flexible when we repay you? And in the meantime, we'll take care of your mortgage, we'll look after the property, we'll insure it, so you can walk away and forget about it. So those landlords who want to retire and go and sit on a beach, they don't necessarily need the money, well, we can help them buy their properties over a number of years. Now, why would that be good for a landlord? Well, when you sell a property that's not your own home, that's not your residence, you pay what's called capital gains tax on the profit. So let's say you bought a property years and years ago at 50,000 and now it's worth 200,000. The difference between what you sell it for and what you bought it for is the capital gain. And on that amount, you have to pay tax. Now you could take off the sales costs and the buying costs. You could take off capital improvement like putting a new kitchen in. All those costs come off. But the profit that's left, you pay tax. And you pay tax as a higher rate taxpayer right now at 28% or 18% as a lower rate taxpayer. And most property investors are probably higher rate taxpayers. Now, there is an allowance. So as an individual, you can get a £11,500 personal capital gains tax allowance each year. And if you're married, it's double that, 23,000. So actually, it makes real sense for a landlord, if they've got a portfolio of properties and they want to retire early because these new tax changes coming in, what it means is they can sell 1 or 2 properties a year over a number of years and use that capital gains allowance for them and maybe their partner, which means they get some tax-free money. How would £23,000 tax-free sound, which is what you can get if you are in a partnership or you've got it in you and your partner's name. So there's a real benefit for these landlords to phase the sales over a number of years. If they're managing the properties themselves, which most landlords do, the problem with phasing the sales is they've got to hang around until the very last property is sold to be able to get all their money. So again, that's not ideal because they want to go and sit on a beach drinking cocktails. This is where we can step in and we can take control of those properties and we can rent them out and we can pay the landlord their mortgage, cover the costs and still make a profit on the property. So you can benefit because we enter into a contract, a legal agreement set up by solicitors where we've got the right to buy this property in the future, and in the meantime we're going to rent it from the landlord, look after it and take care of it. So it's great for us because we can get cash flow on a property which we don't own. Because we're not actually buying it yet, we don't need to get a mortgage, we don't need to put a big deposit in, so anybody can do this strategy. The benefit for the owner, they're going to get the full price, even if they're only going to get it in a few years' time. They don't need the money now. This can work incredibly well for them. Now, the other benefit for you, as well as getting cash flow from this property, you could potentially get equity growth. I believe that we're going to see a dip in the property market going into 2019, maybe in 2020. But if you've got the right to buy a property in 5 or 7 years in the future, I believe the market will have recovered. So a property at 200,000, you're paying full price now, agreeing to pay the full price now. In the future, that might be worth 250. And you get to buy it for the agreed 200,000, even if it's worth 250. So what this means is paying full price in the market right now might be effectively a discounted price in the future because values have gone up. But it gets better than that. You've got the right to buy this property at the agreed price if you want to, but not the obligation to. What this means is that if you want to buy it, you can buy it at the price agreed within the time frame, and the seller has to sell to you. But if you don't want to buy it, you can walk away. Now, from a moral and ethical point of view, if you walk away, you should give the property back to the owner in the same or an even better condition than when they gave it to you. But if you don't want to buy it in that time, you can actually sell it onto someone else. So you can flip the property. And in fact, doing property flips is another strategy you can use with purchase lease options. I'm sure you've thought about buying a house, spending some money on it, doing it up, and then selling it on for a profit. Again, not a great strategy used in the current market. But what if you were able to control a property, spend the money doing it up, and then flip it on? You haven't actually had to buy the property in the first place. You don't have the double stamp duty problem. You don't have to put in a deposit and get a mortgage. You just pay for the refurb costs. So the whole concept of understanding using options, you can control property, and there are many different strategies you can use, you really need to get your head around and you really need to understand. I do talk about it in Property Magic, chapter number 6. However, I've created a brand new training program that we've completely updated. It's a training program we launched last year, incredibly successful. It's our Purchase Lease Option 2019 training. We've completely updated, put lots of new case studies in. People who've done the training last time, we shared their incredible results, such as Annie, who's managed to control a £1 million plus portfolio in London for just £100,000. Normally you'd have to put at least £250,000 in. She's controlling it for that, and she's making about £55,000 profit a year using it as serviced accommodation. Or Ashley, who managed to buy a £1.1 million portfolio. He's got the right to buy it in 7 years' time at that price, the current value, and in the meantime, it gives him about £50,000 profit every single year. These are people who had no prior experience in options, and yet now they control property that's not even in their own name, giving them cash flow and potentially equity growth. So this is an incredibly strong strategy you can use in the right market conditions, which are perfect right now, and as long as you understand how to use them and when's appropriate. Now, the final thing I want to tell you about that's affecting the market, which I mentioned earlier, is Brexit. You know, Brexit, people are worried about prices coming down. What this means is there's a lot of flexibility in the market. It's a soft market. You can negotiate really good prices. And it's easier to negotiate great prices when the market's coming down, and that's a general perception, than when people think the market's going up. So again, an option is a great tool. You can come in, you can secure property, you've got the right to buy it in the future if you want to. So I do hope this has been informative for you and opened your eyes about the power of purchase lease options. And look out for my final 4th video. I'll tell you all about the Purchase Lease Options 2019 home study program. If you want to comment below or share this video with somebody you think might benefit, please do that. I look forward to seeing you on the final video.